Hi, I'm Lourdes Castro Ramirez, and I am proud to serve as the Secretary of the California Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency. Thanks to Governor Newsom and the legislature, the latest state budget has the largest housing and homelessness investments in the state's history. We have doubled down on our efforts to tackle homelessness and the housing affordability crisis with $22 billion to deploy in this arena. To help communities utilize these funds, we have released an update to the Putting Funding Pieces Together guide. This guide has been restructured from last year's version with input from our partners, and it features information on newly available sources of funding. It is designed to support the most impactful uses of new and expanded state investments into many important and innovative programs. Programs administered by our council, by the Department of Housing and Community Development, and by our partners within the Health and Human Services Agency. Used wisely and urgently, these investments will help drive significant progress toward the goals laid out by the Council in the Action Plan for Preventing and Ending Homelessness in California. The action plan calls on us to center racial equity in everything that we do to solve homelessness. From homelessness prevention efforts to meeting the immediate needs of people staying in shelters or in interim housing, or those that are currently unsheltered, we are committed to finding solutions. To the goal of ending people's homelessness through access to permanent affordable housing and supportive services that are necessary to succeed, we are committed to making this happen. The resources described within the Putting Funding Pieces Together guide will provide unprecedented opportunities to expand our efforts together with you and across all areas. Together, with this administration's commitment to prevent and end homelessness, we can make a difference with a systems approach focused on people. We hope that the guide will be a helpful resource as you take action to address homelessness and to expand housing opportunities in your communities. Thank you for your continued partnership and for all that you do every day for Californians experiencing homelessness or at risk of becoming homeless. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this video, and thank you to the Secretary for those remarks to tee up this really important topic. I'm Matthew Doherty. I'm a consultant who works with the state of California around homelessness issues, especially work with the California Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council, but also work in support of all of the state agencies doing work to help prevent and end homelessness in California. I'm excited to join you today to talk about this Putting the Funding Pieces Together guide. It's an opportunity for people across the state to understand the most strategic uses of many different state and federal funds that are available in communities to prevent and end homelessness. This guide replaces an earlier guide that was issued in 2020 that focused more closely specifically on COVID-19 pandemic response resources. This funding guide now is more expansive, including many of the funding sources that are made available through the American Rescue Plan Act and the many different investments into homelessness and housing issues that were provided through the state budget. Next slide, please. The guide is purposely organized into 4 distinct sections. We did that on purpose so that you could use the guide repeatedly and dive into the right level of content that you need, or you can decide what's the right order for you to go through the content. So I'll run through quickly the organization, and then we'll go more deeply through each section. So the first section is intended to provide you with a quick crosswalk to understand the eligible and the prioritized or recommended uses of the different funding sources described within the guide. The next part dives much more deeply into those funding resources, provides you up-to-date information about the implementation of those resources, and also provides strategic guidance around the best and most impactful uses of the resources. The next part of the guide is an opportunity for you to work with partners to put together a local investment plan and to decide upon prioritized activities that you want to invest in, to set targets for those investments, and then to use the other parts of the guide to identify how you would pay for those activities and what are some of the opportunities to use these funding resources for your priorities. And finally, the fourth part of the guide provides a definition of some of the terms around different crisis response and permanent housing interventions. We put that last because we expected that a lot of users of the guide, you'd be very familiar with this terminology. But if you are newer to working on homelessness issues, this might be the best place to start with, and then work your way through the other sections of the guide as well. And now I'll go through each of those four parts in more detail. So next slide, please. The first part provides you with a crosswalk of the eligible and the prioritized uses of many different state and federal funding programs. It starts on page 4 of the guide if you happen to be following along. And next slide, please. And as you'll see here, it provides you with a pretty quick visual reference to understand the eligible uses of different funding programs, as well as what uses might be prioritized. When I use this table, I think of it as you can use it by the columns or you can use it by the rows. So if you use it by the columns, you might start by deciding that you really want to focus on expanding permanent supportive housing and service-enriched housing opportunities in your community. You can then go through the column and identify which of the funding sources included have that as an eligible use. And by looking at the color coding, you might also think about which of those funding sources you might look at first. So the green funding sources might be opportunities to identify first if those resources are available for these use. I will here clarify that the guide isn't intended to help an organization that's planning one specific project to put together all the funding necessary for the project. It's more intended at a system level or a community level to think through, we are trying to expand these opportunities in our community, and these are the funding sources that we can turn to that would allow us for those expanded activities. So again, a little bit more at the system level decision making rather than piecing together the funding for a specific program or project. You can also use this table by the rows. So really just as a quick reminder of a funding source, which uses are eligible, which ones are not. And then the green would be the recommended priority uses of those funding sources. The yellow might be the next highest priority for thinking about how to use those resources. And the red boxes are uses that are eligible, but given the array of other funding sources, you might not prioritize that use for that specific funding resource. So this first table shows you that information for major state programs. And next slide, please. And then the next table does the same thing for the major federal investments, both new resources coming through the American Rescue Plan Act, resources that are active in communities through the CARES Act, as well as many of the other frequently used federal funding resources. Next slide, please. So the following part is really the heart of the guide, starting on page 7 if you're following along, and it dives much more deeply into many of these funding programs to give you a little bit more detail about the eligible activities, the status of implementation of the resources, and how to think about their uses. Next slide, please. So it includes a wide array of the state funding programs. Here we also provide the information about who is in communities is receiving those funds to give you a sense of who's making decisions about how these funds might get used locally, who might you need to partner with to make some collaborative decisions about how resources are going to work together. Unfortunately, as you can see, the resources come into many different agencies and departments at the local level, some to cities, some to counties. Many of these are eligible for use by tribal entities as well. So there's not one place where all of these resources are coming in, but creates an opportunity to partner across agencies and sectors and systems and to think about how all of these resources can be used most effectively locally. Next slide, please. Similar information provided for the federal resources as well. Next slide, please. And then for each of the funding sources listed on those prior slides, it provides more detailed information about the program, how much funding is available, if there were prior rounds of funding, what are the eligible activities, provides as current as we can information about state actions to date. The version of the guide that's available now was issued at the very beginning of November, and it provides the information as of that date. But things are moving pretty quickly. So the guide also always links you to where you can find the most current information about these programs. And then finally, for each of the funding sources, provides strategic guidance for how the funds might be used locally. And this is the state's expression of what they think are the highest and most impactful uses of these different funding sources, with a bias to making sure we're focused on permanent housing exits as the solution to people's homelessness. But for each of the resources, it's tailored a little bit what the guidance may be, and also often includes guidance about how these funds might be used in conjunction with other funding sources described within the guide to put together the array of strategies that you're seeking to support. Next slide, please. Part 3 of the guide starts on page 29, and go to the next slide, please. And this provides you with the opportunity to work together with partners to identify specific kinds of investments you're seeking to make in your community and to set targets or the scale of impact that you're seeking to have. So for example, number 3 here on the slide is that you're looking to provide short-term to permanent rental assistance to at least X number of individuals and families currently staying in shelters or who are unsheltered. So you're trying to expand the ability to rehouse people out of shelters or out of unsheltered status. It then creates the opportunity for you to document what performance measures do you expect that investment, that activity would support. This is really important to begin to focus on because the administration of the HAP Round 3 funding sources, the Homeless Housing and Assistance Program resources, communities are going to have to identify goals aligned with performance measures. Performance measures related to reducing the number of people experiencing homelessness, or increasing the number of people exiting homelessness, reducing the length of time people remain homeless. So many of these investments that you may prioritize would impact multiple measures. It's also important to know that these measures are aligned with HUD performance measures for many of their funding sources, including the continuum of care. And communities will also be asked to focus on equity-focused strategies within their goals and objectives for these different performance measures. Next slide, please. So then the local investment plan creates the opportunity to identify what it is that you're sought to do or seeking investment into, and then to think through how you might put together funding that's described within the guide in support of those strategies. And this sample provides guidance about how to think about the funding resources that you might use to expand activities in any one of these 5 areas, from non-congregate shelter, interim housing, rental assistance of different kinds, permanent supportive or service-enriched housing, diversion and homelessness prevention activities, or outreach and engagement activities. So you can also use this example as a reference to think about which of the funding sources might be the best opportunities to expand activities in alignment with the investments and targets you set in the earlier part of this local investment plan. Next slide, please. The guide itself does include a blank version of that local investment plan template that you can use, or it also links you to an Excel-based version of a document intended to serve the same purpose, the same opportunity to identify investments that you're seeking to make and targets, the same opportunity to identify which performance measures you are seeking to impact with that investment, and also the ability to then put together what funding sources you think will be used locally in support of those activities, and the opportunity to do a lot of that work through drop-down menus to hopefully streamline it, and also to create something that you might work on together and share and be able to modify over time. So definitely encourage folks who are using the guide to also look at the Excel-based version of this local investment plan template. Next slide, please. As you're thinking about the activities that you want to prioritize in your community, we would encourage you to think about the action plan for preventing and ending homelessness in California as a possible roadmap for your work, and to think about these 5 action areas that are included within that plan, and where do you need to make more progress or place greatest emphasis within your work, and then how are your activities that you're seeking to invest in going to support progress across these 5 action areas. It also goes into depth around objectives and activities that, again, might be a helpful way to frame up what it is that you're seeking to accomplish through the activities that you're seeking to fund with some of these resources. Next slide, please. And then finally, part 4 of the guide is starts on page 35. Is a great place to start if you're less familiar with some of the terms that I've been using during this brief presentation. So it defines many of the essential crisis response and permanent housing interventions as they are used within the guide. Next slide, please. So it defines interim housing, including non-congregate shelter. It defines different types of rental assistance. It defines what we mean by permanent housing plus services, which includes permanent supportive housing. It defines diversion and homelessness prevention activities, and then also provides definition of what we mean by outreach and engagement within the guide. Next slide, please. So hopefully that's been a quick but helpful overview of the guide, and will allow you to use the guide as a useful reference tool for yourselves locally in your community. And now I'm going to have the opportunity to pose a couple questions and to discuss some of the funding sources in more depth with a few leaders from different state agencies. So we'll turn to that discussion now. Okay, now I'm going to turn to Victor Duran, who's the grants director at the California Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council. Victor, the state budget includes an additional $1 billion annually into the general funds for the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Program, the HAP program. That's $1 billion for this year and another $1 billion for next year. And the funds are going to be allocated to continuums of care, to counties, to large cities, with $20 million of the funds annually set aside for tribes. Can you tell us some of the most important things people should be considering as they plan for the uses of future rounds of HAP funding in their communities?
Thanks, Matthew. The team at HCFC is very excited to have this opportunity to implement 2 more rounds of the HAP program, which we refer to as HAP 3 and HAP 4. The program will continue to support a broad range of uses, from outreach and crisis services to interim housing, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and other uses. And for HAP 3, at least 10% of the funds must be used for programs serving youth. We're also very proud to announce the tribal set-aside funds, which will be awarded directly to tribes through a separate streamlined application process that is currently in development. Tribal jurisdictions will be able to apply for funds by or before June 30th, 2022, and HCFC will engage with tribal communities as the guidance on the process is developed. For other recipients, COCs, eligible cities, and counties, HCFC has already released the HAP 3 standard agreements, which make available initial allocations of HAP funds of 20 to 25%. These funds can be used for the development of local action plans, strategic planning, developing their performance goals, and all of the other direct services typically allowed under HAP. To receive the remaining funds, jurisdictions must submit their local homelessness action plan, outcome goals, and their funding application no later than June 30th, 2022. Between now and the end of June is a great opportunity for communities to work together on their action plan and to identify meaningful and ambitious outcome goals. And COCs, cities, and counties are strongly encouraged to work together on their plans and goals as they collaboratively lead their community's response to homelessness. Within the flexible uses of HAP, it'll be more important than ever to focus on supporting people to exit homelessness to permanent housing. I cannot emphasize this enough. Beginning with HAP 3, the use of funds and eligibility for future bonus funds must be tied directly to performance goals, which are based on the system performance metrics established by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Grantees' performance measures and outcome goals will emphasize increasing exits to permanent housing, and communities should prioritize activities that support this goal and drive reductions in the number of people experiencing homelessness. There are so many great opportunities to use HAP funds to create permanent solutions to the crisis of homelessness. For example, you can use HAP funding in conjunction with HomeKey to quickly acquire buildings and units to serve as permanent supportive housing and to support successful operations and service delivery. You can use HAP funding to increase exits from shelters and from unsheltered homelessness through rapid rehousing and less intensive forms of financial and problem-solving assistance. And you can also partner HAP-funded services with HUD's emergency housing vouchers to serve people who need both permanent subsidies and supportive services. In addition, the HCFC team will be implementing 2 new competitive grant programs. These are separate from HAP, and the first of these programs will be released in the fall of 2021, with a focus on creating solutions for the needs of people experiencing homelessness in encampment settings. The second grant, scheduled for release in spring of 2022, will focus on ending family homelessness. You can find current information on those programs through the Putting the Funding Pieces Together guide as well. The HCFC grant team will be providing guidance and technical assistance to eligible grantees to support the development of your HAP3 applications and our upcoming competitive grants. We invite you to join our bi-weekly office hours every other Tuesday from 10 to 11 and visit our website to hear the latest about these exciting initiatives. If you have questions or you would like to get on our office hours invite, please reach out to us at hap@bcsh.ca.gov. That's HAP, HHAP, at bcsh.ca.gov. Thank you. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Matthew.
Thanks, Victor. Next, I'm going to turn to Jeffrey Ross, who's the Deputy Director in the Division of Federal Financial Assistance at the California Department of Housing and Community Development. Jeff, the HomeKey program that HCD implemented in the second half of 2020 had really big results very quickly. You were able to make a total of 94 awards to support 120 unique sites that were located in 51 different jurisdictions. And in total, more than 5,900 permanent and interim housing units were created across California. Now, this year's budget provided an additional $2.75 billion in funding for the HomeKey program to be administered by HCD over 2 years. What do you want to make sure people know about the HomeKey program, Jeff?
Thank you, Matthew. As you noted, the HomeKey program was a tremendous success the first time around, and HCD has been moving as quickly as we can to implement new HomeKey funds. Like last year, these funds are intended to be used to acquire hotels, motels, as well as other buildings and facilities so that we can use these dollars in support of permanent housing. It is an important piece to note that sites can be initially used as interim housing with the intention to convert to permanent housing in the future. Likewise, sites can also be used as interim housing with a strong focus on supporting people to exit into permanent housing. As you think about the best uses of HomeKey funds in your community, we strongly encourage you to prioritize opportunities to use these funds to create new permanent supportive housing units, if feasible. We know these resources are critically important to your efforts in aiding Californians experiencing the crisis of homelessness. So we are moving very quickly. We announced the release of $1.45 billion in HomeKey grant funds on September 9th, 2021, and made the application materials available on September 30th of 2021. Applications are being accepted on a continuous over-the-counter basis through May 2nd of 2022, or until all of the available funds are exhausted, whichever occurs first. Another round of funding for HomeKey will be announced in 2022, bringing the grand total to $2.75 billion. Like last year, all applicants are required to engage in a pre-application consultation prior to applying. This consultation will be a great opportunity to discuss your proposal and project and to get feedback from state staff on your planning considerations. It also provides a chance to discuss many different considerations, such as site acquisition, CEQA, land use and land entitlements, COC coordination and service partnerships, and long-term financing approaches. We hope you'll see this consultation as an opportunity to strengthen your plans and to make sure HomeKey has the biggest impact possible in your community. See the HomeKey pages on HCD's website for more information. The Putting the Funding Pieces Together guide has been designed to provide information on many other HCD programs as well. We're also especially excited about the new California Housing Accelerator program, which will bring online thousands of new affordable and supportive housing units currently stalled in the development pipeline. Check out the guide for more information about the Accelerator program and other HCD programs.
Thanks very much, Jeff. Next, I'm going to turn to Julie McQuitty, who's the Bureau Chief in the Housing and Homelessness Branch at the California Department of Social Services. Julie, through this year's budget, the Department of Social Services is going to be able to expand many different programs. Can you give us a very quick rundown on the opportunities that communities have or will soon have through these programs?
Sure thing, Matthew. All of the housing and homelessness assistance programs administered by the California Department of Social Services saw historic funding increases this year. It's a lot of programs and a lot of opportunity and a lot of information. So I'll first remind people that you can use the Putting the Funding Pieces Together guide to get access to links and more information about all of the programs I'm going to mention. I'll start with the programs that primarily support seniors and adults with disabilities. The Project Roomkey and Rehousing Strategy Program received an additional $150 million to support the stability of Project Roomkey sites, and especially intended to support people to leave these temporary settings and move into permanent housing. These funds can support rental assistance, remove barriers to housing, cover move-in and stabilization costs, and provide housing navigation and housing-related case management, among other uses. The Housing and Disability Advocacy Program, or HDAP, was also significantly expanded with $175 million made available in this fiscal year 21-22 and again in fiscal year 22-23. These funds are allocated to counties and tribes to support seniors and adults with disabilities apply for disability benefit programs, while also providing housing assistance and other necessary services to help stabilize clients. And new this year, with additional funding, counties and tribes can expand their HDAP to serve youth, including former foster youth and families who may not have been prioritized previously based on their length of time homeless. Counties and tribes may also serve people at risk of homelessness. And HDAP is a great option to act as an off-ramp for clients moving out of Project Roomkey. Finally, the HomeSafe pilot was expanded with $92.5 million available both in fiscal year 21-22 and again in 22-23. Counties can use these funds to provide housing supports for clients served through adult protective services, and tribes may use funds for those who appear to be eligible for tribal social service programs. And tribes and counties should work in close collaboration with local homeless support and prevention service providers to ensure HomeSafe is integrated into the larger systems that serve seniors and adults with disabilities. Next, I'll spend a quick minute talking about the programs that target families. There's more funding available for the Housing Support Program, a total of $285 million available this fiscal year, and another $285 million available in the next fiscal year. The Housing Support Program provides a short and medium-term financial assistance and supportive services for families in the CalWORKS program who are experiencing or at risk of homelessness. And finally, Bringing Families Home expanded to $92.5 million being available for this fiscal year and next fiscal year. These funds will be used to expand upon a pilot program that has provided housing-related supports to eligible families who are served through the child welfare system. Through the additional funding available for both the Housing Support Program and the Bringing Families Home program, social service agencies will be able to expand the availability and scope of financial assistance and services that are offered, and will also be able to serve a broader population of families via expanded homelessness prevention services and resources. These programs are both great options for rapidly rehousing families in CalWORKS or child welfare programs experiencing homelessness, and can be implemented flexibly, such as with longer periods of assistance or deeper subsidies as necessary to maintain housing stability or to link families to options for permanent subsidies when needed. Please refer to the Putting the Funding Pieces Together guide for more information regarding all of these opportunities.
Thanks, Julie. I also want to thank Secretary Castro Ramirez and Victor and Jeff for being a part of this video and for the great information about all of these programs that you've provided. I want to offer a quick reminder that the Putting the Funding Pieces Together guide includes information on a lot of other state and federal programs, more than we were able to talk about specifically today. I really want to thank you for watching this video. Hope it's been a useful resource for you. Hope the guide is a useful reference for your local planning and your decision-making on an ongoing basis. The guide can be found at the HCFC website. Just search for California HCFC and you should get right there. And then the guide is featured on the homepage. And then finally, if you have questions or want more information or want to contact one of the state departments, there's a lot of contact information provided on page 3 of the guide. Thank you very much.